Welcome to Chasing a Murderer, guys. This is Dulce. She's still missing. I forgot to put her face up on last video, so I got it up this time. Subscribe and like right now. That helps our channel out tremendously. So we're moving on to Connecting the Dots Part 3 on the Vallow case. And we're going to go through September a little bit again. Some of this is coming from the interview on Melanie, some from my personal research, some from articles. So we're going to start off with September 16th through the 18th, where Lori hires a nanny to watch JJ. Lori gets in contact with the nanny through email, and on September 18th, she invites the woman over to her townhome on Unit 175. The nanny describes what it was like going into Lori's townhome, and she said that Lori gave her a hug. She was very welcoming, and she describes the townhome to be very clean and had a picture of the temple on the wall. Lori and the nanny watched JJ play outside with some of the neighbor kids, and then she tells the nanny that a little bit about what JJ is like and his tendencies. He gets emotional easily, frustrated, distracted. He has difficulty communicating with others, but he can follow orders if you look him right in the eyes, Lori tells her. The nanny said she explained to me how they recently moved here from Arizona. Her husband had just died of a heart attack and how JJ doesn't quite understand the situation. She says Lori tells her how she and her husband adopted JJ and that he was her nephew. Lori tells her that her daughter also lives in Rexburg and is going to college. Now remember, some of the excuses Lori give as to why Tylee is a zombie. According to the nanny, Lori mentions something about that. Lori tells the nanny that her daughter doesn't like to babysit JJ without being paid, and that's why she hired the nanny. But according to Melanie Gibb, just earlier in part 2, we learned that she called Tylee a zombie because Tylee was 16, about to turn 17, almost 18, almost a grown adult. She's ready to live her life. And she tells her mom that she doesn't want to babysit all the time. But that makes Tylee a zombie in Lori's eyes. Now, it's not certain, but in one article, it states that the nanny said that the daughter would occasionally come to Lori's townhome to visit for either dinner or to do laundry. But it's not certain if she's seen her or if that's just something Lori tells her. While the nanny was there babysitting JJ, she noticed that it only appeared that 2 people lived there. It appeared it was only Lori and her son JJ. The nanny said that Lori actually asked her to come over the next day for a few hours to watch JJ while she went to the airport to pick up a friend. And at some point, Lori mentioned to the nanny that if she got home late, that she would give JJ his medicine right before bed. She did this because some days when he was extra tough for her to handle, she would give him his meds and have him go to bed early to give her a break. She said the medicine made him tired fast, and she joked about how she liked that. And at this point, the nanny is suggesting that she did not see Tylee while she was there, and neither had the neighbors since September 8th. In fact, the last time that the neighbors actually seen JJ and Tylee was on September 6th around 2:46 p.m. and they were standing over a pile of toys outside of their Rexburg apartment. The neighbor texts the picture to someone else and they ask what's going on. The neighbor replies, the new kid JJ brought a laundry basket full of toys, mostly like stuffed plushie types, and dumped them all in a massive puddle in the corner of the grass. Approximately around September 7th, JJ told his friend, the neighbor, that he and his sister would be leaving soon. They played every day almost until JJ said he was moving to his grandmother's. The neighbor took it as he would probably even be enrolled at the school wherever his grandmother lived. Now, it appears that Lori is putting a lot of effort into getting JJ somebody to watch him because she knows Tylee's no longer here. So on September 19th, the nanny shows up to watch JJ again. She finds Lori waiting on her brother, and then they both leave to Idaho Falls Airport. Had trouble getting that out. Lori mentions that her brother also lives here in Rexburg. The same day that Lori is heading to the airport, a woman claims that she had recently been on a flight with Chad Daybell to Arizona. The woman wanted to remain anonymous, said that she shared a pleasant conversation with Daybell during the flight in September from Idaho Falls to Mesa. She said, "My husband was sitting in the aisle seat, and I was sitting in the other aisle seat across from him, and Chad Daybell was sitting in the middle seat right beside me." The woman mentioned that she was also from Rexburg. During the conversation, the two talked about their families, religion, as well as Daybell's fictional books about the end times. The woman tells him that she read a few of them. She said Daybell told me he was not writing those novels anymore about the apocalypse or something. She says he was going in a total new direction in the books that he was writing. Interesting. The woman said Daybell planned to help a relative in the valley, a woman who needed to remodel her home. He was mentioning that he was hoping that he was able to complete the work before he had to come back and return back home. So was Chad Daybell the person Lori Vallow and her brother were heading to pick up on the 19th? Now remember, September 18th, Melanie Gibb talks to Lori Vallow on the phone, and she's telling Melanie that JJ is a zombie. September 19th, the same day that Chad Daybell's on a plane, Melanie Gibb is supposedly there in Rexburg. September 20th through the 22nd. Remember, Melanie Gibb is at BYU with Lori and Chad, where she sees them display affectionate acts in public. Melanie Gibb describes that the group says that there are dark spirits and zombies, and if you don't support the idea that Chad and Lori support, then you are one of those too. Chad Daybell sits in his portal to receive revelation, and in these portals he is able, kind of like let's say X-Men. Have you seen X-Men? The guy, I can't remember his name, where he's able to see all the mutants through cerebral, I think is what he calls it. Well, Chad Daybell is able to do that with all the zombies in the world. He's also able, as we heard in the last video, to pray to get rid of all these zombies, which means they die, because there's only one way to get rid of the zombies, and it's through death. According to Chad, when he's in his portal, he's able to get the numbers of exactly how many zombies there are in this world. Chad would contact Lori, and Lori would contact everyone else to tell them what was going on. And in an interview, Melanie kind of acts like she doesn't believe in this stuff, yet she's supporting it. Not calling her a liar in any way, but I am kind of questionable why she does this for so long. Later that evening, Melanie Gibb, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Gibb's boyfriend Warwick are heading out to go make a podcast. And the next morning, around 8 or 9 a.m. that morning, according to a few documents, Melanie's boyfriend asked where JJ was. Melanie Gibb said that she remembered the night before that, according to Lori, Alex Cox took JJ to his unit because he was acting up. Warwick remembered the night before he seen Alex bring JJ back to Lori's apartment with his head lying on his shoulder. Warwick said he specifically remembered this because it seemed like a very tender moment. But when JJ wasn't there the next morning, they were kind of curious. Lori gave him as an excuse as to why he isn't there. But it's kind of strange. This timeline doesn't seem to add up for me. It might be something, maybe Melanie gave the wrong time. I don't know. But according to the school, Lori Vallow had gone up to the school that morning with JJ and then checked him out. Anyways, Warwick, again, let's go here. He asked where JJ is. And Lori told Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend that JJ was still acting like a zombie that morning. He was crawling on the kitchen cabinetry and was on top of the refrigerator, even knocking over a picture of Jesus. Now, this is what's interesting. New information had come out that I can add to this. So they are tracing Alex Cox's phone that day, and his phone pings on Chad Daybell's property, and he was there until 10:12 a.m. Alex's phone tracks him near the pond on Chad's property on the northeastern edge, the same time that JJ is missing. And just like that, everything changed. Lori went to the school. I don't know if she went to the school. Don't let me say that. I've not had time to actually do the details on this one. I don't know if she went to the school or if she emailed the school saying that she will homeschool JJ. Now, before this happened, Melanie mentions in an interview that her and Lori actually discussed sending JJ to Kay's home because Lori felt that JJ was a zombie. So according to Melanie Gibb, at some point she believes the reason why JJ is there is that he's at Kay's house. But why in the world would Melanie Gibb feel like she needs to talk Lori into sending JJ somewhere? What is the reason for that? So we've never gotten the whole story of this, of course, and I could have took that out of context too, but there seems to be a lot of mishaps going on and a lot of sloppiness, and they're trying to sweep poop, and it isn't sweeping so well. In my opinion, it's just creating a bigger mess. So we know that Melanie Gibb is on the same level with Chad and Lori when they refer to people as zombies. She understands what a zombie is. She realizes that her whole family are turning into zombies. She's mentioned it herself. And this isn't the only questionable thing I have for Melanie Gibb. Although I am very thankful for her coming forward, I just don't understand why it took her so long to wake up. So, we're in September. We're fixing to move into October, guys, and this is where things get really crazy. Because right now, at this point, nobody realizes that Tylee and JJ are missing. At this point, Kay and Larry Woodcock, they're trying to reach out to their grandson. They're just thinking that Lori's being difficult. They also have some concerns because of the warnings that Charles has given. You know, he was very concerned about the well-being of those children. Guys, let's kind of put this together. So, Melanie Gibb, we're talking about zombies. And the only way to not be a zombie is through death. She's already seen Charles lost his life. Now Tylee just disappears. And then suddenly JJ disappears. They're talking about the death of Tammy and Charles openly with Melanie Gibb. You have to think about this, guys. Think about it. There's no way that she didn't know. And I say this with great respect because what I'm saying is she's not stupid. But then again, you got to think. Melanie Gibb really believes that Chad has these gifts and visions. Now, Melanie Gibb mentions, which I already found out, but it made me feel great when she shared this, that there were other people, members of their group, that were given their visions, saying that there would be earthquakes that happen at a certain time, and that certain time was when these people are disappearing. And that Lori thought that if the earthquake was to happen, then it would be enough distraction to where people wouldn't pay attention to these missing people. One of the big ones that is big into predicting earthquakes is Solsa. Now, I understand there are some very strange things going on, that if there was going to be a second coming, we have all the signs for it. But we've had those signs multiple times throughout history, and one has not been the case yet. So these guys are seeing these things happening with the COVID, the crazy weather, the locusts. I mean, there's so many things. We have snow in June. It's crazy. So Chad's making these predictions, and most of Chad Daybell's predictions are absolutely wrong. And I don't understand for the life of me why they trust him. But they do. So a lot of people are saying if Alex Cox is this great protector of the family, and they suspect that he might be the one hurting children, except for Toddy. I mean, Chad Daybell might be involved with that one. How can he do such things? I really can't answer that question. What's interesting to me is this timeline where supposedly Gibbs and her boyfriend said that, they're talking to Lori around 8 or 9 a.m. And I wonder if the investigators were able to pull their GPS information off of their phones. I'm waiting for that one. We may not find out anything for a while because they're tight-lipped now. Now, we already know that Lori had burner phones. She was smart enough to do that one somehow, probably because of Chad. But is Melanie, who said that she didn't know what a burner phone was, would she have done something like that? So that's curious to know. Not that I'm saying she has anything to hide, but we do have questions considering that, she has to know something funny's going on by this point. It really wasn't until the heat starts to really burn their feet that you start to see them moving. And so that's why it draws questions. Now, interestingly, you're going to see Melanie Boudreau. So make sure, guys, I'm going to try to use their last name so you don't get mixed up between the two Melanies. Melanie Boudreau is going to start, you're going to see her name shortly start to move into this drama. And before we get started in October, I want to make sure you guys remember that Melanie Boudreau is Lori's niece, and she is in with this group. And shortly, you're going to see there's going to be documents that come out that are so similar to Charles' documents. And this is where it gets strange. This makes a little bit more sense to me. So Chad Daybell has this project that he's wanting to have this guy named Hanson that he knows. He's wanting him to help Chad turn one of his books into a film. He said Chad seemed very interested in the project and had traveled to Utah to meet with Hanson about it. But since the project was canceled, he tried to reach out to Chad about, whether or not Chad wanted to do this project, but he's really not getting any text from him. On September 24th, Lori is talking to one of the nannies. I don't know which one it is. And she tells that nanny that her services are no longer needed at the moment because JJ is with his grandmother in Louisiana. Lori tells that nanny that in about a month that she can, start watching JJ again when he comes back. September 24th, Tylee turned 17. There's really not much heard about Tylee turning 17 other than her mother posting happy birthday. And nobody talks about Tylee. This is what breaks my heart. Nobody, as close as his family's supposed to be, nobody knows Tylee that well or is that close with Tylee, and this hurts my heart. It is Kay Woodcock and Larry Woodcock that are looking out for Tylee, because not so much that they feel like they have to, but they feel they need to. So I have to take that back. There is one person on September 28th, Colby, growing very concerned because he has reached out to Tylee and kind of getting these strange texts are just totally ignored. Tylee hasn't FaceTimed him or called him back, and it's been weeks. And a text chain between Colby Ryan and his sister Tylee shows a bit of his concern. Colby says, "Hey Ty, happy birthday. I'm so proud of you. I know you've been through a lot. Trust God, it's going to be okay." And Tylee responds with, "Thanks, Colbs. I love you." Colby says, "Hey Ty, are you okay?" And on Tylee's phone, it says, "I'm good, just tired. Call you back later. Love you." Colby says, "Okay, call me tonight, please." And Tylee's phone says, "At a movie, I'll call you after." Knowing what we know now, it's clear Tylee's no longer here. And most likely, there's only one person that has been found to have Tylee's phone, and that's her mother. And so the texts continue. And I'm sorry, guys. Colby writes her again and says, "Thank you. Please call me after your movie. I'm worried about you." Tylee responds, "Worried about me? What?" Colby Ryan writes, "I just want to hear you talk." I'm thinking these later texts are probably after Colby starts to become a little bit suspicious of, when they're kind of looking for the kids. So this is probably in November sometime or December. Guys, I have a lot of details, and if I had time, I would put it. There's just so much out there. But he keeps getting these runaround responses from Tylee. And this one says, "Okay, this week was busy. I'll call you soon." And Colby never gives up. He says, "Okay, please call me tonight if you can." So Colby says, he just keeps trying. He keeps pushing Tylee to call him, but every time it seems like she just pushes him away. She would keep saying, "I'm busy." And that doesn't make any sense to him. Now, at this point, we're moving into October right now. And guys, you're going to have to pay close attention. It's been hard to put everything I want to put into here because I have so much. But I just can't. Tammy Daybell, which is Chad Daybell's wife, she doesn't see anything coming. Though she is Mormon, somehow Chad Daybell keeps Tammy completely out of his loop of friends. This includes Julie Rowe, Melanie Gibb. These people are supposed to be friends to both of them. But it just seems to me that Tammy has no clue that all these people are predicting her death. And that Chad has this lover that he is holding hands with in public. Nobody's told Tammy anything. And there is quite a few people involved with this clique. These guys are continuing to go to the temple when clearly they do not deserve to continue to go to the temple. They clearly are not living to the expectations of what is moral and good. What you need to know right now is Chad, Lori, Melanie Gibb, all this group, they believe in multiple probations. And so this means that once you die, there's a few places you can go. And I have another video if you want to hear the details. I'm just going to kind of sum it up quickly. You can become a god, or you can be reborn again. You can become a god and give birth to these new reborns. I don't know the terminology for it. Your brain can only soak so much in. I don't care who you are. and then be reborn to a Earth or another planet. You can even come to pretty much inhabit your own planet with your many wives and have many children. In fact, Chad claims that he was, guys, I don't have my notes in front of me, this is memory, that he has been on 30 planets and he has had 5 lives here on Earth. I believe Lori has lived on 21 planets, and she too has had 5 lives here on Earth. Remember the list that I talked about that kind of Chad had that kind of summed up their past lives and probations and all this sort of thing? Well, here's one example, and I want to show you something. This is interesting. Okay, here's one example. You can see here, this is Joshua Vallow. This is the 7-year-old autistic adopted son of Lori Vallow. You can see his lives here. You have 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And you can see who, which tribe he belonged to. In his second life, his third, which is very interesting. He's the son of James and Alina. Now, I want you to pay attention to the next thing. So here you can see Lori Vallow's life. Her second life, she was Lana, a daughter who was married to Neil A. Maxwell. I'm trying to kick this video out quick. Now, 3, her third life, she's Alina, daughter of Jesus, half-brother of Judas, married to James the Just. Now, James the Just is this huge leader in the Mormon religion, and guess who James the Just is? Chad Daybell. So here you go. I have it marked up for you. So, right here you can see on Joshua Vallow's third life, he is the son of James and Alina. Looking down here, Lori is Alina, and her husband is James the Just, who is Chad Daybell. And at their third lifetime, all of them were together, and JJ was their son. How crazy is that? This is the kind of stuff Chad Daybell is feeding to everybody he's in contact with. I wish I had more time, guys, but I don't, and I've really done, you don't understand how hard I work on this case. Maybe one day I'll be able to finish it. But, and I feel like I want to make sure these kids get justice. I really do. I haven't had a chance to see if Tylee perhaps was given a life with her and Chad in their past life, or anybody else. I'm sure it'd be interesting to see. I showed you how you can compare it and who they are if you understand who is who. You definitely can find out just how deep these guys got into this very fictional, I don't know, I don't want to disrespect anyone. October 1st. It's been almost exactly a month since Lori has been living in that townhome in Rexburg, and she goes to a storage unit called Storage Plus in Rexburg, rents a 10 by 10 unit. At first, nobody really knew exactly who was visiting this storage unit with her, but later they were able to determine who it was once they were able to clear out the video. So it appears that Lori arrives and Chad Daybell is seen at the storage facility with her. Around this same time, Lori's brother Alex is served an eviction notice for his Santan Valley rental home. And at this time, Melanie Gibb is very supportive of Chad and Lori and their visions. She knew that there would be deaths to come. Lori had told Melanie multiple times, but her mindset was these things are supposed to happen. If only she could have warned people. And Gibb was supporting Lori and had absolutely no concern for Tammy. Now, Tammy Daybell was just the sweetest thing, guys, and I feel like I need to make sure that she's known and remembered for the great person she is, other than just a piece of a story. She loved all sorts of animals. She especially loved Indian runner ducks. She also raised pigeons, chickens, cats, and rabbits, knowing each one by name. Tammy loved gardening, cooking, and playing games with the family. And as I mentioned, she was very big into helping out her community, and especially her children. Tammy absolutely loved her family and children. October 2nd, 83 days from July 11th, the shooting of Charles, Brandon Boudreaux, the husband of Lori's niece Melanie, is shot at in his driveway on his way home from the gym. It's the early morning hours. He was going through a very emotional divorce. He was in Arizona at the time, and he had assets totaling about $1 million. Brandon thinks, he says, "I thought I had a happy marriage." It was quite overwhelming to him, and as if getting a divorce from somebody you still love wasn't bad enough. Brandon notices something. He noticed this vehicle that's sitting nearby, and it's a very familiar vehicle. Brandon is unaware why that vehicle is there. According to Brandon, he was at his Gilbert, Arizona home in the driveway when this vehicle takes a shot at him and misses his head only by inches. Brandon said he noticed that the car that shot at him belonged to the deceased Charles Vallow. It was that gray Jeep. He had seen it before many times while married to Lori Vallow's niece. A sad story. Imagine this. He says there was a Jeep parked outside waiting on him to return. Brandon pulled into his drive around 9:30 after returning home from the gym when he saw a gun poke out of the Jeep's window, which fired a single rifle shot at him before fleeing the scene, he says. At first, Brandon thought the shooter was using a paintball gun. This was due to the sound it made, but when he examines his car, he sees a bullet hole and realizes it was a real gun with a silencer. The Jeep sped off, and he takes a closer look at his car and notices the driver's side window is shattered beside him. It's at that moment he realizes the shooter missed him just barely, and he began to panic. He calls 911.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone just shot my window.
Spending time with Lori and her now deceased husband, Charles.
You can see Brandon is very panicky, but most of this 911 call has been redacted since it first come out. So it's unclear what Brandon was really saying to this dispatcher completely anyways. And we learned that Brandon suspects later in interviews that Alex Cox, Lori's brother, is driving that Jeep. After the police arrive and take Brandon's statement, a police report is filed and an attempted murder investigation begins. Now, Brandon did suspect that Alex Cox was driving what he believed at that time to be Charles Vallow's Jeep. Luckily, the Jeep was caught on CCTV and was later confirmed to be registered to the late Charles Vallow. After this, a shooting attempt and threat to Brandon Boudreaux's life, he takes his 4 children and goes into hiding with them. And who could blame him? And shortly after that, he hires a private investigator. This was a horrifying reality for Brandon, especially after he knew what Charles was going through and struggling with, and then he ended up dead. And now something very similar that happened to Charles is now happening to Brandon. Just adding more questions to this series of unfortunate events. See, it was almost like deja vu. Charles had contacted Brandon and many other people, including friends of Lori, her family members, and stressed to them that he felt very concerned about her mental health And so Brandon was very familiar with the strange behavior he was dealing with involving his wife. Brandon Boudreaux's wife, Melanie Boudreaux, is hanging out with Lori and also hanging out with the same religious group that Lori is. Brandon remembers that Charles suspected that his wife Lori might be having an affair. And now he was dealing with his wife making these sudden changes, and he kind of had his own suspicions as well. Brandon felt that Lori was the reason for his wife's sudden change, especially in character. According to Brandon, this religious group reminded them of a cult, and both Lori and Melanie were consumed by their teachings, especially the teachings of Chad Daybell. Most of the people involved with this group were seeking guidance from spirits on the other side at the temple, and they referred to them as behind the veil. Brandon was having difficulty grasping this concept. Brandon said in later interviews, quote, "I just don't know how people can get so wrapped up that they can end up in a space where these people are. It's just so radical, so different," end quote.
I know what happened to those kids. I know that there's people who do and they're not talking. I know what happened to those kids. I know that there's people who do and they're not talking.
So it was pretty overwhelming, end quote. And he's referring to the fact when his wife asked him for a divorce, he didn't seem to have any warnings, no signs. It was just all of a sudden, here it is, it's happening. After the shooting, Brandon Boudreaux tries to get in contact with his wife, but he can't find her. And right now, the family and friends are really starting to talk a little bit. I mean, there's these crazy things happening, and they believe that Chad convinced Lori, basically, he's the reason that she believes that her kids are dark and now zombies. According to Lori, there is nothing of their own light or spirit left in their bodies. And we're understanding that Lori started to grasp this idea at the very beginning of spring of 2019. But we have a conflict with that. So these dark spirits or zombies they dwelled in the body of her children and now living a life of deceit and lies. So we know through friends that they believe that Lori was consumed by Chad and his books and his beliefs. If you think about the time where Charles mentions that Lori says she just don't care about the kids any longer, this is the most likely reason she suddenly doesn't care for her children. Her children are already gone. While some people believe Lori was innocent and lost, others think Lori seen the chance to be famous by writing books, leading 144,000 to safety and to the light. Not to mention, cater to her narcissistic side, extreme ego, and her greed for money and power. Some believe that Lori had a part to play for Chad as well. She gave Chad the confidence to believe what he's always thought he was. And that is, Chad Daybell has always seen himself as a prophet of the future, a leader of Zion. He has visited many people during his lifetime, teaching about his gifts, his ability to see in the future, and we all know that he writes about how the end times are here. He is able to convince others that he has this ability or gift to know certain outcomes. Chad Daybell is like a magnet drawing other people who have gifts similar to his. People who know Chad Daybell see him as a person that values his family and very loyal to them. They believe he's a good man, a good father, a good friend, and they believe he's a great leader. But in truth, Chad Daybell really doesn't spend much quality time with his family. He spends most of his time writing books, preparing to make movies off of some of his books, meeting new people, pitching his teachings, and responding to emails. We're still on October 2nd. We know that early that morning, Brandon Boudreaux had an attempt on his life, and he seen the vehicle and recognized it to be Charles Vallow. Later that day, on October 2nd, a video shows a blue Rogue arriving at the storage around 2:25 p.m. that day. She makes her way to the back of the building, arrives at her unit, and about 2 minutes later, at about 2:27 p.m., she gets out of the vehicle with a man, and that man is believed to be Chad Daybell. They open up the trunk of her car, and at 2:29 p.m., the man believed to be Chad pulls a tire from the back of her Rogue. Then he rolls it into the storage unit. About 1 minute later, he and Lori carried what appears to be a removable rear car seat, and they carry it together and put it into the unit. They close the unit up and leave about a few minutes later at 2:32 p.m. Also, later that day, October 2nd, Lori Vallow is using Charles' email account and going through Amazon looking for a malachite ring. No one would discover this until months later. She also searches for wedding dresses and white outfits for a man, including tennis shoes. Kay Woodcock says,
men's extra large clothing. Charles, it wasn't for him. And it was these men's tennis shoes, things for her, a new yellow bathing suit for her, swim trunks for a man, extra large. All this was right there for me to look at.
So what we learned about this ring is it was a size 4 sterling silver southwestern style malachite gemstone. According to the paperwork and history that they find, she spends about $35.99 on the ring. Why would she be searching for a ring? And definitely, why would she be searching for wedding dresses? Interestingly, October 3rd, the next day, Lori returns to her storage unit, and she's actually with her brother. Let me make sure I say this right. It appears to be Alex Cox. So he carries the tire from the unit to the car, returns to the storage, grabs what looks like the seat, and hobbles, carrying that back to the car. It appears that Alex Cox is driving his silver truck as well. Inside the unit are children's toys, bikes, baby photos, as well as a bag with JJ's initials on it. Throughout that month, you'll see several of them return back and forth to the storage unit. Alex Cox dropping off gun cases, Lori and Chad Daybell going back and forth. We're not certain exactly what they bring in and out of the storage, but they can be seen bringing in the children's bikes later on that month. Now, what is curious is Lori Vallow is using Charles Vallow's account on Amazon to order a ring. And on October 7th, according to a receipt shared with a news team called East Idaho News, we found out that the ring had actually been delivered to Lori's address. And they actually verified by 3 people that that ring was delivered to her address, that townhome she was living in Rexburg. But during this time, investigators are not aware of this ring. They're not aware of the purchases or the search history. But what you need to know is Kay Woodcock, Charles Vallow's sister, actually inherited Charles Vallow's printer, which will later play a very big, significant role on how investigators are able to obtain some of the evidence that they get. We'll also learn shortly why Lori was interested in buying or purchasing a malachite ring. So we're moving into mid-October, and Tammy Daybell was just recently at her parents' house just a week ago, dancing in their living room, very healthy and doing very well. And on October 9th, 7 days After Lori is searching the web and Amazon for wedding dresses, rings, beach attire, and let's not forget about the threat on Brandon Budo's life. On this day, Tammy Daybell files a police report. Tammy had just finished grocery shopping and pulled into her driveway. She started to unload her groceries when she noticed a man dressed in all black, wearing a mask, had a paintball gun in his hand, and he was standing in her driveway. The masked person points the gun at her and pulls the trigger a few times, but nothing comes out. Tammy asked the man several times what he was doing, but the man never spoke. At that point, Tammy says that she yelled for her husband, Chad. Then the masked man took off running through the back of her yard and just disappeared. According to reports, Tammy calls Fremont County Sheriff's Office and reports the incident. And curious, this Humphreys, the Sheriff Lynn Humphreys, told Rexburg Standard Journal that investigators believed it was likely a prank and claimed to have never found the man. So it's very important that you remember who this guy is, because I feel like he just never really does a very good job. He likes to take the word for whatever happens and come to his conclusions without evidence. And you'll see why I say that shortly. They didn't even pull up shootings that had happened in nearby areas that were similar. So, for instance, Brandon, who was in another state, also seen a masked man with a gun, and it was pointed at him while he was at the driveway. So somehow Humphreys missed this. Is it that our police department can't use keywords, masked man, gun, search, see if there's any similar reports happening? I can't answer that, but it would make sense to me if they could. It would probably help them solve a lot of crimes much quicker. I'm just telling you guys, I do not have much faith in this investigating team that was on Tammy's team, so I might rant a little. Shortly after this incident, Tammy posted on her Facebook, "Something really weird just happened, and I want you to know so that you can watch out. I had gotten home and parked in my front driveway. As I was getting stuff out the back seat, a guy wearing a ski mask was suddenly standing by the back of my car with a paintball gun. He shot at me several times, although I didn't think it was loaded. I yelled for Chad, and he ran off around the back of my house." And that is an interesting thing that you hear there, that whoever this person felt safe enough that he could run through the driveway and through the backyard of where they lived. It seemed whoever this was knew their way around that area. Sometime in this time frame, Chad Daybell has increased Tammy Daybell's life insurance policy. Another significant red flag. Yet we're not seeing these charges coming from the prosecutor, Rob Wood, yet that will be able to bring justice. So around the 12th of October, Matthew Price, which is a neighbor of Chad Daybell, he and Chad have lived across the street from one another since Chad and his family has lived in Idaho. In fact, he was following this story when it started coming out. He said, "We've been concerned the whole time for JJ and Tylee." He said Chad had suddenly become a different man. He had new interests, like in different types of food that he ate, how his body appeared, as well as his health, which is something we also said. So before anything happens to Tammy, one day Chad and his wife go over to that neighbor's house to buy pumpkins. Tammy, as always, wanted to please her family. Nothing stood out about Tammy. But Chad was not himself. His neighbor Matthew described that things seemed okay most days, aside from the bonfires, but that he did have one weird interaction with Chad. Matthew said that he was strange, he was different, he didn't talk a lot. He didn't make eye contact with us very much. Normally, he would. His neighbor Matthew said that it was out of character, but he figured Chad was having a bad day. So it's October 16th, or around it, less than 2 weeks after Brandon was shot at. Brandon says he got a text message from his wife, Melanie. It says that she had planned to move to Boise, Idaho, and the kids could stay with him in Arizona or go with her. At this time, Brandon is afraid for his life, but he's trying to work things out with his kids. There's a point in time where he can't even find his wife, but suddenly there's a text saying that she's moving. Brandon believes that Melanie did all this to join the religious group of the Doomsday Preppers, which was led by, they suspect, Chad Daybell. Brandon says, quote, I think it's an infatuation with the end of the world and an infatuation with power, and they're using it to try to make money off of people's beliefs. Okay, guys, having to end part 3 here, and we have a few things going on. My daughter got sick. She was in a lot of pain. We went up to several hospitals the other night. We couldn't get treatment, and that's because the hospitals were packed full, mostly COVID patients. Hospital staff says they are not prepared for this, like we were told that they were prepared for this. Their ICU rooms were full capacity and working on it on others. So it was very upsetting because we ended up not being able to get treatment, and she was in so much pain, guys. We had to bring her home, try to find what we had to try to treat her. So please hang in there. I'll have part 4 out shortly. Okay, everyone, stay safe out there. I'll try to get this out whenever I can. I'm just going to take care of my family for right now. Love you guys. We appreciate you caring and hanging out with us. Bye.